When it comes to lens design, there are two different approaches. One can view the lens as a measuring instrument that has to transfer information to the sensor with maximum level of details and minimal distortion. Nothing personal, just math. Or one can approach lens design more creatively. In this case, the lens is seen as a brush, a tool with unique features or character that will affect the result. If you prefer this second approach, you will appreciate the Fujifilm 15mm f1 that I will be discussing today. Creating an f1 lens is no small feat. The sheer weight of such a lens, its high price and its usability are the main concerns. I have tested multiple ultra-fast lenses for Fuji, and each manufacturer has solved these problems differently. 7 artisans in 35mm 0.95 just straight up cheated. Added a speed booster to an old lens. Laowa, on the other hand, created a real aperture of 0.95 with their 33mm Argus lens. However, they saved money by skipping autofocus and reduced weight by not addressing many optical issues. Fuji said to hell with it and made an autofocus lens with a real f1 and amazing optics. This decision, of course, affected the weight and price of the lens, but it didn't raise them to insane levels. Initially, the lens was supposed to be a 35mm fast prime, but over time the engineers got so carried away that the prototype began to weigh 1.3 kilograms. That's almost 3 pounds. It required a leg for mounting on a tripod, which is a bit too much for a 35mm lens. Fujifilm then scrapped everything and made a 50mm lens out of this monstrous 35, which turned out to be easier. Don't get me wrong, this 50mm f1 is still big, weighing in at 850 grams or almost 2 pounds. But it's a normal weight for what it is. The Fujifilm 50mm f1 is equivalent to a 75mm f1.5 lens on a full frame, which is pretty close to a common 85mm 1.4. For those lenses, a weight of 800 grams is typical. Similarly, the price of this lens is high but normal for what it is. Usually, Fujifilm price fast primes at around $1,000. This lens is priced at $1,500, which is what you would pay for a 56mm with APD filter for soft bokeh, or let's say a 50 to 140 f2.8. So again, it's expensive, but within reason. We already got used to heavy primes costing $1,000 or $2,000. The Fujifilm 50mm f1 is exotic, but not as ridiculous as Nikon Noct. And after you start delving into the details, f1 may even seem cheap. This lens has 12 elements in 9 groups, and one of the groups is 4 optical elements connected together. This is a big rarity. Usually elements are connected only in pairs. In order to do that, they had to be perfectly, and I mean perfectly, matched together. Produce 2 elements that will do that is hard. Produce 4 that will perfectly match together is extremely hard and expensive. But this allows you to reduce the size of the lens and better cope with optical defects. The front lens is concave, which is also an expensive design solution that improves image quality. A spherical lens, a slow dispersion and numerous coatings, everything that could be added to fight chromatic aberrations, vignetting and distortion has been added here. There is no way to avoid small aberrations at f1, but they are few and they never spoil the picture. As a result, the sharpness in the center is excellent, but closer to the edges, contrast starts to drop. This is the huge problem for math lovers of photography world. After all, it is that simple. Reduce everything to graphs. The lens with the most even MTF graph wins. The higher the resolution in the center, the better the lens. And if there are soft corners on a test chart, the lens is no good. Some reviewers even call the 50mm f1 lens the worst lens of the year. Nonetheless, it still sold very well. After all, Fujis are used not by mathematicians, but by photographers. And it was them who Fujifilm engineers tried to please. Although reduce everything to math was just as easy for the engineers as for those reviewers. Use resolution charts and MTF graphs, calculate a scheme in which there will be maximum sharpness within a target weight and budget, and solve it like a math problem. Fortunately, Fujifilm decided to take a different route. This lens was built not by mathematicians, but by artists. The 50mm f1 is optimized for character, color rendering, and overall impression from photos. This is difficult to calculate or measure, but it is what Fujifilm engineers prioritized. And for that reason, this 50mm lens has flown right into our hearts. The 50mm f1 is an incredible tool for photography. It is sharp enough for portraits without going overboard. The combination of wide aperture, beautiful color rendering, and excellent contrast gives images a nice volumetric rendering. The bokeh is pure magic, and it's not just about the aperture. After all, the difference between f1.2 and f1 is not so crucial. But the bokeh from this lens is just from another dimension, compared to everything else that exists on Fujifilm. Headshots and full body shots look stunning. Even at f1, this lens can show some environment in portrait shots. There is definitely an X factor in the photos that this lens produces. It's hard to measure, but it takes the photo to the next level. This lens is also a pleasure to work with. The focus is not fast, but it doesn't interfere with your ability to get the shot. Lens rustles its heavy glass elements in the process, but ultimately you get clear focus on the eyes most of the time. The hit rate is very high for f1. However, for video it's a different story. This lens was conceived long before people started shooting video on Fujifilm cameras. The autofocus motor is not linear, so autofocus is not very suitable for video. And manual focusing has electronic jerks, making it very difficult to smoothly transit focus in video. It's only suitable for static shots, and for this amount of money you would expect more from the lens for video. For this reason, we are not ready to add the lens to our collection. $1,500 for a photography-only lens is too much for us, although the image quality makes us think hard about it. For Fujifilm photographers who shoot people and want an artistic brush, not a microscope, it is a great purchase.